What if I told you that some of the best financial advice out there wasn't dreamed up by some modern guru, but was actually etched onto clay tablets almost 4,000 years ago? Seriously, we're going to head back in time to the ancient city of Babylon to uncover some simple, timeless stories that, believe it or not, hold the keys to building real wealth today.
But first, let's start with a question that feels, well, a little too real. You ever look at your bank account and just think, I know I make money, so where is it all going, right? You work hard, you're good at what you do, but by the end of the month, your purse just feels empty. If that hits home, you are not alone. In fact, you're in the exact same spot as a guy who lived thousands of years ago.
And get this, the answer to that feeling isn't some complex new app or a crazy spreadsheet. Nope, it comes from Babylon, a city that became one of the wealthiest in all of history, not because they had gold mines or tons of resources, but because its people just understood the simple laws of money. And you know what? Those laws haven't changed one. So, let's start with that core issue, what the Babylonians called the problem of the lean purse. It's that feeling, that universal struggle of earning a decent income but having pretty much nothing to show for it. Okay, so let me introduce you to a guy named Bansir. He was, by all accounts, the best chariot builder in all of Babylon. I mean, people came from all over for his work. He should have been rolling in it, but he wasn't. One day, he's just sitting there staring at an unfinished chariot, and it hits him. Just working harder is not making him any richer.
And this is the first huge lesson Bansir figured out. He realized that being good at building chariots was only one part of the equation. Having a fat purse for a little while doesn't mean a thing if you don't have a system, a golden stream to keep it full. He knew there was a piece of the puzzle he was missing.
That realization is what pushed him to go looking for answers, and that brings us to the absolute turning point of this whole thing. The first law of gold. This is it. This is the foundation that everything else is built on.
So Bansir and his buddy, a musician named Kobe, they decide to stop complaining and actually do something. They go to their old friend Arkad, who started out just like them but was now famous for being the richest man in Babylon. They basically just asked him, dude, how did you do it? And Arkad told them a story about a secret he learned when he was just a young, core scribe.
A wealthy moneylender gave young Arkad this one simple sentence. And at first, Arkad was totally confused. He said, "But all I earn is mine to keep." The moneylender just laughed and pointed out that, sure, he paid the baker, he paid the sandal maker, he paid his landlord, but he never paid the most important person of all, himself.
So what does that actually look like? Well, the old man told him to save at least one coin out of every 10 he earned, 10%. And this is the key. That 10% isn't what's left over at the end of the month. It's the very first bill you pay. Before rent, before food, before anything else, you take that 10% and you pay yourself. This one single habit was the tiny seed that Arkad's entire fortune grew from.
Okay, so saving that 10% is huge. It's step one. But you can't just let those coins sit in a jar gathering dust. You got to put them to work. And that's the whole idea behind our next section, making your gold grow. This is where you turn your savings into a little army of workers for you. So Arkad learned his next lesson the hard way. He took his first little pot of savings and gave it all to a brickmaker who swore he was going on a trip to buy rare jewels. Well, you can probably guess what happened. The jewels were fake, and Arkad lost everything. The lesson is so simple but so important. You don't ask a brickmaker about jewels. You ask a jeweler. You have to seek advice from people who are actual experts in what they do. Now, after that disaster, Arkad starts making some real profits from smart investments. And his first instinct? To spend it. On fancy clothes, big feasts, you know the drill. But his mentor warned him with this amazing metaphor. He said, "You're eating the children of your gold." Think about that. He was told to let his profits, the children, grow up and work for him, making even more gold. It's the ancient Babylonian way of describing compound interest. So there you have it, the whole blueprint Arkad got all laid out. First, pay yourself at least 10%. Second, only take advice from people who actually know what they're talking about. And third, put your money to work so it can make more money. It's simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Now, a lot of people hear success stories like this, and they just chalk it all up to one thing: luck. But, the Babylonians had a totally different take on this. So let's talk about how to actually attract good luck. Well, is it? Are some people just born lucky while the rest of us are not? In the story, the citizens of Babylon are debating this exact thing. They see other people getting rich, and they just figure the goddess of good luck must have skipped them over. But Arcade shows up and teaches them that luck isn't random. Not at all. It's what happens when preparation meets opportunity. It shows up for people who are actually doing things, not just wishing for them. It rewards the people who see a good chance and jump on it, and it runs away from people who say, I'll think about it later.
And that leads us to this incredibly powerful line. The biggest enemy of opportunity, of good luck, is procrastination. Delay is the thing that turns a golden opportunity into a sad story about the one that got away. Action. That's the real magnet for good fortune.
So being ready for an opportunity is one thing, but what about being ready for disaster? A fortune is pretty useless if it can be wiped out in a single bad day. And that's why the Babylonians focused on building strong financial walls, which is what we're going to look at now. This is all about protection. There's this great parable in the book about a time when a massive enemy army was marching towards Babylon, and the city survived, not because of some last-minute heroic battle, but because it had these massive, impenetrable walls. Walls that were built and maintained for years and years, long before any enemy was even on the horizon.
And that is just a perfect metaphor for our own lives, right? Our enemies aren't armies with swords, they're a sudden job loss, a medical bill, a car that breaks down. Our modern walls are things like an emergency fund, the right kinds of insurance, a solid plan for the future. You build these things when times are good, so they are strong and ready for you when a crisis hits.
But what if the enemy is already inside the gates? What if you're already drowning in debt? For that, we turn to the story of Debasir. This was a guy who ran from his debts, ended up becoming a slave, but found his way back and reclaimed not just his freedom, but his dignity, all with a simple, powerful plan.
And here it is, the exact plan from the ancient clay tablets. Now look closely at that first step, because it's the most important part. It starts with the very first law of gold we talked about. Pay yourself first. This is so critical. Even when you're buried in debt, you must keep that 10% for yourself. That small amount is what rebuilds your soul. It gives you that feeling of winning again. Next, you figure out how to live on 70%. And that last 20%, that becomes your weapon. You use it to attack every single one of your debts, one by one, until you are finally free.
Debasir's story just proves this timeless truth. It really doesn't matter how deep of a hole you're in. It's not about your circumstances, it's about your resolve. If you are truly determined to find a way out, a way can and will be found.
And all this leaves us with one final, very important question. The people of Babylon didn't just stumble into wealth, they built it, on purpose, brick by brick with a clear, simple plan. They paid themselves first, they sought wisdom, they made their gold multiply, they built their walls, and they crushed procrastination. These 4,000-year-old lessons are just as true today as they were back then. So, the only question left is, what's your plan?